All right, hello, Honors 110. This is Professor Chin. I'm really excited to go ahead and get started with this class. So first thing I should say is if you haven't watched the introductory video yet where I went over some of the core pieces of class procedure and whatnot, please go back and give that a look first. I know that could be a lot to watch on a first day, but rest assured, there's a lot of kind of information there I think will resolve some confusions or misconceptions or whatnot. So please do tend to that if you haven't already. With that, for today's, I wanted to kind of just go over some kind of further core elements of the class. As you might see on the syllabus itself, if you've gotten that far, it mentions that today is dedicated to kind of just why are we here, going over the syllabus. And so in particular, I'm going to draw your attention to the last leg of the syllabus, the last 4 or 5 pages or so. They're dedicated to the course schedule. That's where you're going to find what the reading assignments are per day. That's where you're going to find what actual written assignments I'm expecting you to turn in are going to be due. The general flow is going to be, I encourage you to read the readings that are listed before you watch the video lecture, before you participate in the class discussion. There's no reading assigned for today besides technically the syllabus. I would encourage that, be giving that a look after you watch this video if you haven't already. But nonetheless, starting tomorrow, we'll be getting into more formal reading assignments. And so with that, the way the class overall is structured is into 3 units. So with that, we have our first unit on education, our second unit on identity, and our third unit on relationship, sex, and love. And so with that, correspondingly, there will be an essay at the end of each unit that you'll be expected to turn in. Those are kind of the core assignments for this class. And there's some other work, obviously, in terms of the online discussions. There will be a group video presentation later on in the term, but rest assured, we'll get to all of that. Big pieces I want you to know, though, are, please do, again, as I mentioned in the introductory video, keep up on the readings. In addition to allowing you to participate in the discussions and know what I'm talking about in these video lectures, you will also find that when it comes time for essays, if you haven't done all of the readings, you're really kind of selling yourself short because you're missing some of the core tools you could use to make those essays happen. So with that, for today, again, I encourage you look over the syllabus for yourself. I'll leave a space below to ask questions. But one of the big parts of today that I wanted to get us going with is just getting to know each other a little bit. I know especially in these online classes, it's hard to build a sense of kind of community among the class. In general, we're not really seeing each other aside from you all watching me in these video lectures. But because the discussions are going to lean into us kind of speaking to not only what's in the readings, but how our own personal experience and views kind of interact with those readings, it is important for us to kind of get to know each other to some degree, to build some comfort level with kind of sharing about our own experiences and so on and so forth. So as an icebreaker for this online class, I want to lead us off with 6-word stories. So 6-word stories, it's not a trick term. There aren't secretly 7 words in them. They're literally stories that are 6 words long. To my knowledge, there's only one really famous one. It was written by Ernest Hemingway, who was himself an author who's really known for concision, writing things kind of in as few words as possible and still packing a lot of meaning in there. Case in point, that famous 6-word story I'm referencing here is "For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn." So that story, I think it became famous in part because it kind of lends itself to interpretation, which is what 6-word stories do so well. Because there are so few words, the reader has to kind of meet halfway with the author and be able to kind of apply their own kind of experience to it, apply their own reasoning to it to try to figure out what's being communicated there. And this particular story, I'm going to leave this somewhat open to interpretation here, but I'll give you kind of 3 kind of core takeaways that people tend to have from this story. Not an exhaustive list, but just some things to think about. The sort of dominant read that most people apply to this story is that it's about someone who's lost a baby, right? So typically you don't have baby shoes unless you're going to have a baby who's going to wear them. And so if someone was expecting a child, they might buy baby shoes during that whole nesting process where they're getting ready for that to happen. But something sad has happened, right? The baby's been lost. Maybe it was a miscarriage. Maybe it was a stillbirth. Maybe the child passed very suddenly, very quickly. It could be any given version of this sequence of events, but nonetheless, someone has bought these shoes and now they kind of just want to get rid of them or kind of get the money from them, just kind of move on with their lives. But there are some less bleak interpretations of this story. So for one, the idea that as someone who I myself am a parent, I'll probably reference my son throughout this course and these video lectures. But I will say, someone who was a child to, or not a child, I was a child once, but that's not what I'm talking about. I was the parent to a very small child in the not too distant past. I remember he hardly ever wore shoes when he was a baby, right? He wasn't walking yet. When we go outside, he'd be in his stroller. I'd be carrying him around, or it was like for the purpose of letting him like crawl around in the grass or in the sand or the beach or whatever the case might be. And so it's just not practical. Babies often don't wear shoes very much. If you're the kind of person who bought a bunch of different shoes for different occasions or got gifted a bunch of shoes by your family and friends, you might have some new baby shoes that were never worn that the kid's going to outgrow them before very long. And then it's just one other angle on this. I don't know if anyone in this class this would apply to, but I know there are people who do the whole Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace hustle where they buy up things and resell them, right? And so it's possible someone maybe they saw there was a big sale on baby shoes, they bought a bunch of them, and then they're reselling them at a markup to make a profit. Nothing tragic at all about that story, right? So part of what I think is cool about six-word stories is, again, they invite us to kind of inflect our own understanding on them in some ways. If you're someone who has had that kind of tragedy in your family, you're going to go kind of straight to the tragic reading. If you're someone who constantly does that sort of hustle and reselling stuff, you probably go to that business place with it. And it's all up to that sort of interpretation. So to build to the icebreaker element of this, I'm going to invite all of you to write your own six-word story by way of introducing yourself to the class. And so you can be as literal as you like with this. If you want to just talk about things like your major, where you're from, some of your favorite things, right? Like your favorite musicians, your favorite movies, so on and so forth. That kind of thing is fair game. If you want to be more kind of symbolic and mysterious about it, more literary in a sense, more poetic, please feel free to do that. And with these six-word stories, feel free to, I'm going to leave a thread open for you to share these. You can give the six-word story to introduce yourself to the class. If you want to include an explanation further, please feel free to go on and elaborate on it. If you want to leave it kind of, cryptic or basic or mysterious or however you look at that, also that's perfectly fair game. So with that, again, I hope everyone will participate in that. So we'll kind of get to know each other a little bit here on this first day. But otherwise, I'm also going to leave a thread open to think about the topic of education. So as I referenced previously, we have the 3 units in this class. Education is the first unit, which will be starting up later on in this first week of class. And so with that, part of why I start here is I know every single one of you has some experience with education. At the barest minimum, you're in this class, right? And so you have that foundation to work from. And so I'm asking for a very brief free write where you just kind of think about your first kind of reactions when you hear the term education. Some things you might think about, like what are your best experiences with education? What are your worst experiences with education? What do you think of our education system on the whole, or our culture around education today? What are your goals and what you're kind of pursuing via education? Any of that's fair game. You don't have to stick strictly to those topics, really wherever you want to go. This is mostly by way of just kind of starting the discussion and kind of thinking about this topic in broad kind of abstract terms before we're going to get much more specific with the assigned readings later on this week. When you participate in that thread, I'm going to encourage you, keep your responses relatively concise. So as we move on through the class, in general, no maximum length. I encourage people just to kind of go on and on if you're so inclined for these posts. But for this one, I want to really encourage people to read each other's posts. And I know that when we get those giant walls of text takes up your entire screen, people start kind of skimming and reading kind of quickly or just skipping over the post altogether. So in service of trying to make sure we have some interaction of ideas and kind of see where we can kind of cross-pollinate ideas and whatnot, I'm going to encourage you, please do keep these ones to more like 3, 4, 5 sentences, so somewhere in that ballpark. Again, all things are fair game as long as it relates to education and your thoughts on it. So speaking of discussion threads and all of that, to kind of review and kind of cap things off for today. So for the class discussion I'm going to post today, so you're responsible again for 2 posts total. I'm going to post more than 2 separate threads below, so you can pick and choose which ones you want to participate in. If you want to participate in all of them, that's perfectly welcome as well. I hope everyone will include a 6-word story, again, just by way of introducing yourself to the class and getting to know each other a little bit. I hope many of you will choose to share your thoughts applause from the education free write as well. You may respond to others' posts, either in those 6-word stories, like someone mentions, something they're really into and that overlaps with what you're into and you want to kind of go back and forth a little bit. That's great. That counts towards class credit and participating. Similarly with the education topic, I expect there's going to be some overlapping experiences here where even if you didn't literally go to the same schools, you had some shared experiences and so might have some similar views or conflicting views that we can kind of get into a little bit in relation to those things. I'm also going to have a thread for just general questions about the class and what's going on here. So rest assured, if you want to ask some substantial questions, that will count towards your participation as well. One other quick caveat I should put with the whole 6-word story thing, I recognize 6 words is generally wouldn't qualify for what I would describe as a substantial comment. In this case, it's okay. That will count, rest assured, as one of your posts, even if it's literally just the 6 words in there. So I hope that's all clear. I'm really excited to see what you all have to say, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the discussion.